Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. So let's discuss about a few additional things apart from what we have discussed in the past. And obviously, it would be a continuation, okay, of the previous sessions. So we have already discussed and covered a lot of ground with respect to conditional statements, in which we discussed about if else, if else. Then we have discussed about loops, wherein we spoke about for loop, range. Okay, we have spoken about how do I use conditional statements and loops within conditional statements. We discussed about functions such as pass, continue, break. How do we make use of those? We've also looked at how do I use conditional statements within a for loop, within loops. So conditional statements and loops within that, or loops and conditional statements within that. Okay, then we have also spoken about while loop, nested loops. Okay, and here is where, initially we got it wrong and then we rectified that. Then we have a lot of functions. We discussed about what are the various inbuilt functions. What are the various variants of that? Okay, and we have called multiple arguments within a function manually. And then we have also discussed about, how do I define a function with conditional statements within that? And how do we define, functions with variable number of arguments? How do we give functions with variable keyword arguments like this? First name, last name, phone number, in that way, so that it creates dictionaries. Okay, in a dictionary, you know for a fact that we need to have key and a value. So that's key value pair. Then we have discussed about global variable assignment. Then we discussed about local variable assignment. Then we discussed about how do we define global variables within functions. Then we discussed about recursive functions. Okay, then we spoke about some kind of list comprehensions. How do we write multiple lines of code? Okay, how do we ensure that we comprehend that? Instead of having two lines, how do I comprehend into a single line? Right? How do I further comprehend it? Okay, all these things we discussed. Then we discussed also about dictionary comprehension, wherein you create dictionary in this way using multiple lines of code as opposed to single line of code. Okay, and then you have key value pair declaration. Then we discuss on how to zip and how to unzip the files or the different, data points. And then we have also discussed about a few built-in functions with respect to sorting. How do I sort the values in ascending order or descending order, so on and so forth. Then we spoke about the differences between list and a tuple when it comes to assigning the same variable or assigning different variables, different memory IDs, assigning same memory ID or a different memory ID. And then we also spoke about handling the exceptions, missing values using a library called as collections. Then we have lambda functions, which are also called as nameless functions. Okay. Lambda functions are called as nameless functions. Then you have map function. Then we have a filter function. Then we have a reduce function. And reduce is something which is part of Python library called function tools. And we also know that help function would be extremely helpful in understanding a lot of activities. Then we have also discussed about loop, comprehension versus map. How does a map function help you accomplish a specific task? And how do we use comprehension function to accomplish a specific task? How do we write a for loop to accomplish a specific task? Now we need to get into this specific conversation and speak about iterators. And we need to spend some time in understanding what is an iterator. Okay, so when you create a list of elements or items, then this particular variable which contains the list of items becomes iterable. It becomes iterable. First of all, what is an iterator? Iterator is an object that can be iterated, meaning that you can traverse through all these values. You can traverse through all these values. You can, refer to all these values one after another. Within Python, an iterator is an object. It's an object or a variable. This is called as object or a variable. So what is an iterator? An iterator is an object or a variable which implements the iterator protocol. A specific protocol has to be followed. Specific process has to be followed. Protocol means process. For this, within Python, within iterator, or this specific iterator contains methods. One method is this, iterate. This is one method. Second method is next. So one is iterator, another is next. These are the two very important things that one must be aware of. We'll anyways talk more about that. Okay, we'll talk more about this. So, yep. For now, if you understand this specific thing that I've just explained, it is good enough. Now, what does this iter method do? Okay, or this specific function that you're seeing iter, what does it do? Is what we need to understand. Let me see. Yeah, here it is, iter. Okay. Anyways, now what we are doing is, if I were to run this, you're creating an object or a variable called names. And when you say names dot iter, it is going to convert this object into an iterator. And you're going to assign these to another object or a variable called new list. When you say print of this, it is going to say that, hey, this specific list that you created is an iterator object. It is saying that this is iterator object now. When you say help of this new list, it will say that, okay, this is an iterator object, and it will give you a lot of details. Okay, a lot of additional methods which can be used. And if you say that for every object, what is this? You made this names, which is an object, you're making it an iterable object. You're making this an iterable object. Meaning you can traverse each and every value within that. When I say for every object in new list, print those. So what will it do? It will first go to the first object, which is Rishu. Okay, let me remove this. Yeah, it's going to go to the first object, first element of the object, print it. Then it will go to the for loop, in which it will go to the second element of the object. It will print that. Then it will go to the for loop. It will go to the third and then print it. And then it will go to the fourth, and then it is going to print that. There is another way of converting these specific, items or elements into iterator. For that, you just need to use this function called iter. When you do iter of names, it's obviously going to make them iterable. Iterable means you'll refer to each and every item in a structured manner. And iter of names, what does names contain? These names would contain these elements. Yeah, the moment you make it iterable and then you're storing it in new list, what happens? When you say next, next is a function which is used to refer to each and every element. First, it refers to this, you're printing that. Now, when you say print the next, it will go to the next item. It is not printing you the same value. It's not printing the same value. It is printing a different value. Then when you say print of next, it is moving to the next element. If you want to understand this better, and then when you run it as a separate cell, for instance, print next. Okay, let me run this. And then let me run this. It's going to move to the next element, which is the last element. However, I'll just remove the outputs so that we have some space to type new lines of code. If I were to just say that you have names, and if I were to print names, it will print out the various values. However, if you say print next names, see what will happen? It will certainly throw an error. Uh-oh. Sorry, let me close this and again run it for your benefit. It will still throw an error. It will say that this list object is not an iterator. If it is an iterator, you can use this next method. But since it is not an iterator, since you did not convert this into an iterator, you cannot use it. If you convert that, you need to store it in the same object name. If you're using names, it will not work. If you use new list in which you have iterated the elements and then position, then it works. Okay, so this is the difference. However, if you directly take names, which is an object or a variable which is not iterator, then it prints out all the values here. This is how it works. Now let's understand a few more things. For I, in range of this, you want all the values of I, and you're storing it in names. Then if you say iterate the names and store it in a new list, okay, here if you just say print names and print new list, what does it do? Let's see. Data rate exceeded, input output, publishing of input output values. Okay, huge, right? So the memory that you have is not even sufficient to print the details. If you just say print of names, then it gives these. When you say print of new underscore list, it is saying that this is iterator object. This is of type iterator object. We can also do this new list. And let me just remove this. Now also it should say that it is an iterator object because it's the last line. Now, there is something called as import system. Okay, now let me do one thing. I'll go to runtime. I'll change the runtime type. I will use a high RAM and a GPU machine. Why am I doing that? Because I just want to see whether inclusion or if I increase the size of memory, is it going to help me or not in fixing this issue? Not sure. Let's see. So if I were to run this, oh, still it's the same issue. So the additional RAM, which is 25.46 GB, and a GPU machine is also not sufficient to print out numbers which are in the range of 0 until 1 million, one value less than a million. Whenever you say range, it starts printing, right? 1, 2, 3 in that way, all the way until the last number is ignored. So it'll be 9999999. All the way from 0 until here, you keep printing the values. Okay, next. So that means the memory that we have is not sufficient. And this is where, I mean, if you don't iterate the numbers, it's going to take huge amount of space, huge amount of memory. And if I just use this, if I were to use this and run this. Okay, let me run this. And I'll repeat this step once again for you all, just to understand what happens, right? I'll stop this. It's not stopping. I think the new list also I should have run. Unnecessarily, I'm running this. Okay, so let me run this as well. You're iterating, right? When you iterate and when you try to then print, it will print all these four. All these four. If you do not iterate, if you don't make it an iterator, and if you print out this specific list, it will print out the results here. And when you iterate, let me also delete this, help. Okay, I want as limited lines of code as possible just to help you understand the difference. Okay, here we are creating a specific variable on an object, which is not iterator. We're just saying that print out the results. It gives the results to you. Now, when you take this and make it an iterator and store it in new list, then when you say for every object in new list, print the values, or when you say iterate, make this names as iterator, store it in new list and keep printing the new values. Either you do this or do this. It is going to print out the results onto the screen, onto the output. Okay, then this part is done. Now I'll just copy this. And just to help you understand on how it works, let me show you. If I were to run this, it is printing out all the values. Okay. And then let me wait. Let it print out. So it's printing all these values. But it would take some time because we are printing approximately 1 million values. Not approximately, you're actually printing out 1 million values. So let us wait until all these values are done. So we shall wait for all these numbers to be printed. And let us wait for 2 minutes. Okay, I'll wait for 2 minutes. I'm going to be on mute for 2 minutes until this specific process is completed. Okay, this is done now. Okay, so we could print all these numbers. All right, and even if you make it an iterable object, for example, let me delete that, remove this, because you know that now that when it is printed, doesn't make sense to have it. Now, if I make this names an iterable object, and then if we try to do this, wherein for every object in new list, if we were to run it, it's going to print the values. Not sure whether you're able to see the speed or experience the speed now. It'll be certainly very, very fast. Okay. We'll wait for another 2 minutes here, and then we'll proceed further. Another minute or so, I think, and all these should be printed by then. Let's wait for all these values to be printed. All right. So we were able to successfully print these numbers also. I'll just remove that. Now, what is the difference between an iterator object versus a regular object? This is a regular object, right? Means if I say import sys, okay, and if I use this f here, what happens is size of variable names in, and this f is nothing, you know, unusual. This is called as an f string. Hey, sorry about that. There is some issue with the internet connectivity here. So is the best I can do. Okay. What is within Python? And it is pretty straightforward. When using an f front of a string, all the variables which are used inside these curly braces are replaced with. What do you mean by that? Okay, hold on. Let me do one thing. Let me show you what that f exactly does. I didn't want to, include far too many things at one go and confuse you. Hence, I didn't explain back then, but now let me explain. Because that f is coming in far too many places. So it actually makes sense for us to understand. Say you're creating a list and then here in print, you're using f. The moment you use f, within the curly braces, this variable will get replaced with the respective variables. What if I do not use f, and if I were to run this, what happens is it will take this, which is in curly braces, as is and print it. But if you want those values to be printed, you just put f before that. And here we go. You import system, and then what we are doing is we are saying, what do you want to print? This part. Whatever is in single quotes or double quotes, you want to print exactly that information. And the moment you use f in the curly braces, it will take that value and then print the value. So from system, you're saying get the size of this specific object which we have created in bytes. So these are the bytes. So it is 8697472 bytes. If you want it in kilobytes divided by 1024, you get it in KB. Okay, how much would we get? Let me use a simple calculator, or let me use Excel to show you that calculation in maybe KBs. So we have bytes. How many bytes? 8697472 bytes. If you were to change this to kilobytes, KB, then you say, take this number divided by 1024. These many kilobytes. If I want to change this to megabytes, MB, then you divide this by 1024. You get 8.29 MB. Okay, this is the size of an object which is storing just some numbers, just 1 million numbers. That's it. Just to store a million numbers, this is what you get. When you have a regular object or a variable, it is not iterable object, mind you. However, the moment we convert this into an iterable object, then what happens? Let's see. What are we doing here? We are saying print size of variable new list is, you have something bytes. 64 bytes only. The moment you make a specific object or variable iterable, it is converting the entire object here or variable into a certain number of bytes. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Now let me show you that this is an iterable object. The moment you make this as an iterable object, what is the size? Size is becoming 64 bytes. If you were to divide the 64 bytes into kilobytes, you divide this by 1024. You get 0.06. If you want it in megabytes, you divide it by 1024, which is much, much smaller, right? This is, if I were to give more, it will show me decimals. Right, let me format the cell and ensure that we have all the decimals possible. Look at that. It is 0.00006,104, which is minuscule, right, in comparison to 8.29 MB. So the moment you make a variable iterable, the amount of space it is occupying has reduced significantly. There is a significant reduction. Okay. So what are all the iterable objects? You can give numbers. You can create a list. Here we created a list. Okay, here we have created a list and made it an iterable object. Right here, the numbers are being converted into iterable objects. So let me tell you that if you have a list or a tuple or a dictionary or a set, all of these are iterable. And to make it iterable, you use a function iter, which is a method rather, not a function, it's a method. And you also have next, which is a method. What does next do? It will keep printing the next set of values. So you are having something called as machine learning. Okay. And we are assigning it to an object or a variable called iterable value. The moment you make it iterable, what happens? Let's see. While true, try this. What are you trying? You're saying you want the next of this iterable object, meaning M separately, A separately, C, H, I, N, E, space, L, E, all of those will get printed. And when do you want to have an exception? You're saying stop iteration, right? Exception will happen when iteration is over. When it iterates and keeps repeating each and every element and prints, it will come here and it will break. Okay. And if you observe here, that is exactly what is happening. So each and every element you're printing. And you're going to that while loop and printing. You're going to the while loop and printing, including the space. Everything gets printed. And after everything gets printed, it's going to stop the iteration. That is, you break and come out of the loop. All right. This is about your iterator object. Then we also have something called as generator. So remember one thing, we'll have next and iter methods with an iterator protocol. That is what we discussed. Then we have something called as generator. Generator is used to create our own function, which is iterator. It's a special type of function, friends. What is a generator? Generator is a special type of function. And it does not give you a single value. Instead, it will give you an iteration of values. That is what it does. It will give you an iteration of different values. Okay, so let's look into that. If I were to define a function called sequence, okay, and we're using x equal to, we are just initializing. And when you use this generator, remember one thing, that yield function comes into picture. Okay, let me write it down. Whenever you talk about iterator, two things should come into your mind. One is iter method. Another is next method. These are the two methods which should strike you. When you use generator, yield is a keyword that you need to remember. Instead of using return, we use something called as yield. So instead of using return at the end of the function, if you just say yield like this, that means you want a generator. That is what it does. So you're defining a specific function. You can give any name for your function of n colon. When you enter, there'll be an indentation which will be created. And we have an empty container x. And here you're writing a for loop. For I in range of n, range of all the values, you're just saying x dot append. You keep appending the values and return the value. So let me run it. Now, if you say sequence of 10,000, instead of n, you're giving 10,000. What does it do? It will initiate an empty container for I in range of all these values. For I in range of all the 10,000 values. So when you say sequence of 10, it will first initialize this. An empty container would get created. Then you're saying for I in range of n is 10,000. Range of 10,000 would give you 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way until 9999. And when you say x dot append to this value, keep appending the values, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, keep appending all the values. And then you're saying return that x value. So print those x values. That is what we are doing. And we are storing all those values in this A list. And then you're saying print whatever we have in A list. Either you do this, or let me remove this and then run this. Right? It is going to print out all the values for you. Or just say print, then you get the results. Save it in some A list and then print the values. It would give you all the values. These are the two different ways of dealing with this. You just say A list equal to, you just store all the values in that. And when you say print, it's gonna print all those values. Scroll it in this way and see that all these values until 9999 get printed all the way until here. Now, what about generator? Okay. If you use this function called yield, then you're going to create your own iterator function. It's a special type of function, nothing specific. The only thing is you use yield. So if you say, define the sequence, a function for I in range of n, same kind of a function is what we're writing. But the only thing is we are just saying yield I. How will it help? When you say yield, how is it going to help? Okay. So now let me run it. Okay. And then if you say sequence of some numbers, you're storing it in B list. And when you print, it will say that this is a generator object now. This is generator object. Let me remove this. And let me run this. It's saying this is a generator object. So what? How is it going to help me now? What did we do? We have put it in B list. And when I say print the B list, okay, it is going to print and say that this generator object. Now, if you say, okay, let me do one thing, I will just create another line of code. I will use next function. Let's see what it does. Show me the next of B list. 0. Oh, I see. Again, if I run next of B list, 1. Again, if I run 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way until 9999. And when can I use next? If I make this iterable. How did I make this particular thing iterable? By just including this function yield. The moment you use this yield, this function will be called as generator function. And using generator function, we are able to create iterator object. Okay, this generator object now starts iterating. So when I do keep doing next, it will keep giving the values. The beauty with this also is the same. If you say, I want to print this, that is size of variable new list is, so this will print size of variable new listings. You're going to the system, you're saying, get me the size of this A list, whatever is at A list, which we created. Here it is. A list of bunch of all these numbers in some bytes. So you get these many bytes. Then if you say print size of variable new list is, if you're going to get this size of B list bytes. Okay. So the size reduced significantly. So you can start making use of iterators, and you can also, create a function, a special function, which will also iterate your specific function itself. And that is called as generator. You can also do that. And both of these are going to save your size of your file significantly. We can use a simple generator for something called as Fibonacci numbers. Fibonacci numbers means 0, 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus series is called as Fibonacci series. Now we are writing a function, and within that you're calling as limit. What is the definition of that? So what are you doing? You're saying define a function. And then here you have A comma B. You're initializing and assigning A equal to 0 and B equal to 1. These are the two, numbers that you're giving. And then you're writing a while loop. While A is less than your limit. Limit is this, within this Fibonacci. You can give any, friends, one thing, the name of your function, and within the brackets, the variable that you provide can be anything. Okay, you can give any name here, and you can give any name here as well. So while A is less than that, yield A. Yield A means you also have the moment you say yield, what are you doing? You're making it a generator. Generator function. You're making this specific function, and you're making a generator by just including this, by including the keyword yield. That's it, simple. By just including this keyword yield, you're making this a generator function, which is iterable. Iterable means print the numbers one after another. Simple. And here you're saying A, B should be changed in this way. So if it is 0, 1, A and B, and now what you need to do is B and A plus B. B is 1. A plus B is also 1. Now assign this B value to A. So B value is 1, assign it to A. And assign A plus B value to B. So A plus B is 1, assign it to B. While A is less than limit, again repeat this. Yield of A means what you want to make this A iterable. You're making this A iterable. Yield of A. Okay. Anyways, next what happens? You take the B value, assign it to A. What is the B value? B value is 1. Then assign A plus B to B. What is A plus B? 1 plus 1 is 2. So what you want to do, B value should be assigned to A. B value is 1, assign it to A. And A plus B, assign it to B. A plus B is 2, assign it to B. Again, you're making this yield of A in this loop. If A, while A is less than limit, you repeat that yield of A. And then here, once again, you do the same thing. B is 2. And you also have to do A plus B, which is 1 plus 2, which is 3. Now, assign B to A. B is 2, assign it to A. Assign A plus B, which is 3, assign it to B. And keep continuing this cycle. Again, B is 3 and A plus B is 5. Assign B value to A, B is 3. And assign A plus B value to B. Okay. Now, what are you doing here? You define your function and then you're saying x equal to Fibonacci of 5. The limit is 5. So while A is less than 5, until then run it. So A is 3, which is less than 5. Until then you run it. Now if you do it, what will happen? B is 5. And A plus B will be 3 plus 5, 8. Now if you assign B to A, it becomes 5. And A plus B, which is 8, you assign it to B. Now this A is 5. 5 is less than the 5 value, right? A value is 5. So you're saying 5 less than limit. Limit is something that you define within this Fibonacci function, which is 5. 5 is not less than 5. So it will come out of the while loop. So what you're doing here is, while true, if the condition is true, try printing the numbers next of x. X contains all these numbers. X contains nothing but the value of A, which you're making it iterable, right? 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, right? Until 3, because A value you defined as 5. 5 is less than A value here becomes 5. And then less than limit is 5. 5 is not less than 5, it will stop here. So next of x, what it does is, it's going to print this value, 0. Then you want to end with a new line. So it will come to the new line. The next value, which is 1. Again, go to the while loop, print the next value, which is 1. Again, go to the while loop, print the next value, which is 2. Again, go to the while loop, print the next value, which is 3. And after that, it will stop. Because you don't have any more numbers. So this while loop will become false. And then it will stop. This is how you can make use of iterators and generators, both of which consume very less memory. Will consume less memory, so you can start using that. Okay. All right, friends. So we will stop here, and tomorrow when we connect, we will take this discussion to the next level and talk about a lot of additional things. Sorry, my bad. Let me quickly tell you guys that tomorrow we will not have a session. However, we're going to have a session on Saturday. So let me put it here. Friday, we will have no session. Saturday, we shall have session from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. IST. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel without fail. And please follow our LinkedIn page and ask your friends, relatives, people to please follow us and subscribe. Thank you all so much for listening patiently. And I'm sure you're enjoying. Please leave your feedback, and your feedback is going to help us a lot in improving the further sessions. Thank you all, and have a great day for people joining from other part of the world. Otherwise, good night, friends. Thank you all. Bye.